Good afternoon and welcome to Feed Yourself Well. Tonight we're doing Sunday dinner and it's all about a pork loin roast. Not a pork tenderloin, which is small and thin, but a pork loin roast that comes in a pretty nice sized piece. So what I did was I cut it in some sections and we're going to do a brine. So the brine, which you see here, is going to infuse a lot of flavor. It's going to extract moisture and then flavor's going to go back in. So for a pork loin roast, it's going to take about 24 hours to really get that flavor in. Let's say if I wanted to use this brine for a pork chop or for a pork tenderloin, anywhere from 4 to 6 hours would be great. But for a larger size piece of meat, you definitely need to let it sit overnight in the brine. Now, what's in the brine? The brine is a combination of a half a cup of dark brown sugar, a half a cup of kosher salt. I put 2 vanilla beans in that I used from my homemade vanilla bean extract. So I've got vanilla beans and vodka in here and it's been extracting all summer long. So I took 2 beans out, put those in, and I added a tablespoon of vanilla to this. It also has 2 cinnamon sticks. It has 2 bay leaves and about maybe a good teaspoon of whole peppercorns are in here. So we got peppercorns, we've got cinnamon sticks, vanilla beans, and brown sugar and salt. Then I added 9 cups of boiling water to it. 9 cups of boiling water is going to break down the sugar, break down the salt. Everything's going to come together nice, but you need to let it cool to room temperature before you put your pork roast in. So let it cool down, don't rush it. Might take about an hour or so to get down to room temperature, but then you go ahead and you submerge the pork roast completely in the brine. So once it's covered with the brine, you cover it with the top, put it in the fridge and let it stay 24 hours. And we're going to season it a little bit with the seasoning blend of my favorites. I got some Creole seasoning here, and I've also got a little bit of sugar in the raw and some cinnamon. That's it. So I'm going to take this pork. This has been in the brine overnight. It's done. I'm going to drizzle just a little bit of vegetable oil over it. I patted it dry. This is going to help the spices stick. I'm just going to take a brush and make sure I got it all over on all sides. That's definitely going to help those spices cling nicely to the protein. Okay, so a quick rub with a little bit of oil and then just sprinkle that spice blend all around. I'm going to make sure you get it on all sides. I'm going to turn it over and we're going to do the other side. Okay, so we got our spices on. I want to massage those in a little bit. Let's make sure we get some on the sides. We can just tamp it down and roll it around and make sure we got it fully coated with our spice blend. Then we're going to truss it with our kitchen twine. So to do this one, it's pretty simple. Nice piece of kitchen twine. I'm going to come under. I'm going to tie a knot. This is going to help maintain the shape while it's cooking so that it'll hold together real nice, be a better presentation when it comes out. And you just want to loop your kitchen twine through and give it a little wiggle. Get it in place. Then I'm going to repeat that one more time. Right around. This is a butcher's knot or a butcher's tie. Rotate it once. Then I'm going to take my string and I'm going to thread it through on both sides. So I got a nice bundle going. And one more piece. Right through. Flip it back over and I can tie it off. So So I've got this piece of string that I'm going to anchor with the other one. And just tie that in a knot and it'll hold. And I've got some shears here that I'm going to use just to shorten that knot. I don't need that full string dangling. So I got my pork roast nice and trussed. So we're going to prep this to get it ready to go in the oven. So we got our pork loin nice and trussed and ready to go in the oven. But first, I took a sheet pan and I'm going to put some apples and onions on it. But first, I'm going to drizzle a little bit of olive oil, or this is vegetable oil, not olive oil, just vegetable oil. I covered the pan with a little aluminum foil first. So the oil's on. That's just going to help it stop sticking. I'll go in with some onions. These have just been diced, that's it. You can be coarse chopped, doesn't have to be fine dice or anything special. And I canned some apples last year, and I'm just going to add those apples right with the onions. So I've got apples and onions. I'm going to sprinkle a little of our seasoning right over the top of those apples and onions, and then I've put the pork on a rack, and the rack is going to rest right on top of that bed of apples and onions. So while the roast is actually cooking, those juices are going to drip down into the apples and onions. Some of that flavor will permeate, and we're going to roast it in a hot oven first. You want to set your oven at 400 degrees. Then after 30 minutes, back it down to about 350. When you back the temperature down, you're going to loosely tint it with a piece of foil. I've got a piece of foil here, just loosely over the top. Do not wrap it tight. You want some air to circulate through there. So after 30 minutes in at 400 degrees, loosely tinted, reduce the temperature down to 350, and then let it continue to roast for about 30 to 45 minutes. My best suggestion is that you cook to temperature and not to time. You want a thermometer to insert in the center of the roast to about 170 degrees. Take it out at that time, let it carry over, cook, and rest for about 15-20 minutes before you actually start slicing in it. So we're going to go ahead and get this in the oven, and when I come back, we're going to slice one that's already done. So the pork roast is out of the oven. This took about an hour and a half to completely cook through to 170 degrees. I took it out. It's been resting. I'm going to remove that butcher's knot just by cutting right through it and peeling it down and get that twine off of there. You see it made a nice crust, so it looks good. Let's get that right down there. There we go. And I'm going to slice right through. It should be nice and done. Nice and, oh yeah, that looks great. Pork roast should be nice and pink or very pale when it's done. This one came out really nice. We're going to plate it up and pair it with some buttered and salted potatoes that we've sprinkled heavily with chives. Real easy to do. Just slice the potatoes, bring them to a boil. Once they're done, drain them, throw them back in the pan. A lot of butter, a lot of salt, a lot of chives. Tastes really great that way. And we also have our apples and onions, these roasted underneath, and we're going to use this as a garnish over the top of the pork roast. So let's build a plate. Let's get some potatoes right on there. This is Sunday dinner at its best. Man, these potatoes look great. Can't wait to taste them. And roasted vegetables. Clean out your fridge. Whatever you've gotten in there, chop it up, throw it in the oven, season it how you like, and let them go. I've got zucchini squash, yellow squash, red onion, some broccoli, a little cauliflower left over. All that's in my vegetable medley there. And I'm going to pair that with a couple slices of pork roast. Let me put that down and use both hands so I can cut all the way through. I'm going to put both slices right on the plate. And then over the top, just some of those nice apples. It's so the meat is so juicy from the brine. You can see it just sweating right out. And that's a nice dish. It's vanilla cinnamon brined roasted pork loin paired with a nice potato with a little butter, salt, and chives, and some roasted vegetables. So that's tonight's dish. I definitely want to taste this roast before it gets away from me. This is my favorite part. Tender, flavorful. The brine really permeated the meat nicely. I don't want to talk with food in my mouth, but feed yourself well. See you next week. Fall is coming. Fall starts next week. We're going to be doing some canning, some stuff with squash and pumpkins and all kinds of fun stuff going into the fall season. So subscribe, turn on notifications. I'm going to chew the rest of this up. See you next week.